He spent 12 seasons in the National Football League, an all-pro defensive end by way of the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Beat Train, Bertrand Berry. And Mike Grose. It's Train and Grose on the No Bull Podcast Network.
You know what I'm tired of?
That opening.
No, I'm tired of people telling me they're going to do something, and then they don't do it.
That's pretty quality
the
intro.
opening?
If you don't want to do it, just don't say anything.
Yeah.
Don't tell me you're going to do something and you do it.
Yeah, don't tease me, right?
Right?
Yeah.
Man,
Get me all excited and a big letdown.
there you go.
What
Welcome
happened
in, Train and Gross, back
Yeah.
at the Train Station Studios in downtown Phoenix.
Reunited, and it feels so good.
That's right. I wish we could have music on podcast. I still don't understand. I mean, I do, but I don't.
Can we do music in the background? Can we do like a light jazz, smooth mix, like turn the lights down a little bit and get our Barry White on? Could we do that?
Oh, yeah. You got a dimmer switch on?
No, unfortunately, I don't have
You call
a
your
dimmer switch.
electrician back and say, hey, everything's good. I just need a dimmer switch.
But I mean, I could actually set the mood. I can actually light up some things, but that's a story for
another day. Exactly
Yeah.
right. Hey, it's our post NFL, the Final Four edition.
Yeah.
Great football all weekend long.
Yes, indeed.
And still 3 more games to go, but it's kind of got that feeling where you can see it coming. The end of the football season.
Depression.
Right? The build up to the Super Bowl.
Countrywide depression.
The build up to the Super Bowl, but know on that Monday, we'll have everybody will talk about it.
Monday. Sunday at 9:00.
Well, for our purposes.
Yeah. Oh, you're right.
But you're right. And then nothing
Ugh.
until August, if knock on wood, if things go well this year.
But then there's basketball. Oh,
There's basketball and hockey and
baseball.
But anyways, we won't dwell on that just yet. Let's do it this way, B.
Let's do it,
let's
bro.
break it down conference by conference.
All
We'll
right,
start
let's
with
do
the AFC.
Okay.
And let's start yesterday.
Okay.
And I love social media because there's a lot of people that are a lot more clever than I am.
Uh-huh.
And we saw the end of the Kansas City-Cleveland game. How about this? Hashtag Henny Given Sunday.
Well done, I might say, too.
I don't know who that was.
That's Patrick Mahomes.
Was that Patrick? Because
He
another
tweeted
one
it out.
there was another one that said hashtag anything is possible.
Well, that's anything is possible. That's Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, I knew one of the other was Patrick. So
Yeah.
it's a good sign that he could get it together and send that out. But
Should he have been fined for that?
he may, depending how
He
soon
wasn't
it
in the
was
locker
after the
room
game.
when the game was still going on. No, the game was still going on.
Was it still going on?
Yeah.
So that
I mean, I'm
means
just saying.
whether or not we'll get to that in a
Yeah,
minute.
there you go.
But you look at it and how improbable that was. We were talking about all the great quarterbacks out of Michigan, but Chad Henne, and somebody, this guy's still in the NFL,
Right.
and to be able to look, I don't want to make this out more than it was, but it was one play, really. Well, he made a couple plays,
two plays at the end, back-to-back plays.
yeah, but he had a couple throws early, and basically just but when you think about a 35-year-old guy that's been sitting around basically holding a clipboard for the last more than half of his career.
Never thrown a playoff pass in his career. 13 years. Think about that.
And whatever else you think of Chad Henne, fleet of foot is not one of them.
No.
So, great individual play by him and a huge breakdown by the Cleveland defense to allow him to get that. I believe it was a 3rd and 15.
But I think you give credit to Andy Reid for even putting it. I mean, he's in shotgun with no back. I mean, it's empty. So on 3rd and 18, it was 3rd and 18 following the sack, and I'm thinking, okay, they're going to run a draw, they're going to punt. Browns will have about 1:10 left, probably around their own 15, and see what they can do.
Well, fair to say then.
Andy Reid puts him in an empty backfield and says, "Have at it, kid." Like what?
Speaking of social media, there was a picture of the cojones on Andy Reid. Not only that, but the game plan that he called all up and down. But breakdown on Cleveland side and great execution, coaching and player on the Kansas City side.
The thing that I will say is, one, you got to give a standing golf clap to the Cleveland Browns.
Absolutely.
The year that they had, what they were able to do, all of the streaks that they were able to end this year with 11 wins regular season, 12 wins as a season total, getting into the playoffs, first time since 2002. I mean, the list goes on and on. It's safe to say that the Browns are going to be around for a while. If everything is everything, then I think this team is going to be around. And I think they've got their coach in Stefanski. I think they've got their quarterback in Baker Mayfield. I think they've got their running backs, if you will, Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb. I mean, those guys seem to be cornerstones of what they want to do. And I think the defense, for the most part, there may be a few positions that they may want to upgrade as far as talent-wise. But I thought this team went in and battled and got as much out of their talent as they possibly could. They just ran into a team that's just much more talented.
No question. No question. And for me, being from Michigan, it's hard to give any kind of love or respect to Cleveland or any Ohio sports. But if there's a more long-suffering fan base than the Cleveland Browns.
That deserved it and needed it.
They needed it.
Yeah.
I mean, you played for the Broncos. I mean, they still relive the drive.
Oh, okay.
They still, I mean, that's still ingrained in their collective memories. And so, no, absolutely. If there's a fan base that needed that, sure. And I think you're right. You look at what they're building there. Finally, it feels like it has some staying power.
No doubt.
But for this conversation, they go home and get to figure it out for next year. Yeah. And Kansas City moves on. And, the big question now becomes, is the quarterback going to be ready? As you said, he's sending out tweets while the game's still going on, so I guess that's on the positive side. But they went through the protocols where it's independent doctor and that sort of thing, whether or not they're going to be able to get him back. And it was – I mean, he looked like a boxer standing up when they first pulled him off the turf. Like, he almost went down.
Yeah, it was a no-my situation.
Yeah.
And keep in mind, too, even before that, he had the toe situation, which I thought maybe that was going to be something that was going to sideline him. Maybe they were going to try to save him and hope that somehow, some way, Chad Henne could get them through a quarter and a half, because that was one of those games. It seemed like a costly game for the Kansas City Chiefs. Yes, they won the game, but is it going to cost them their franchise quarterback and arguably the best player in the game right now in Patrick Mahomes? I worry about his safety and his health overall, because as it stands, as talented as this team is, as many pieces as they have to try to beat you, it does not work without Patrick Mahomes.
No.
You have probably the best tight end. You have probably the best wide receiver. You've got the best coach as far as calling plays and game planning. You got a pretty good offensive line, and you got an opportunistic defense. But none of it matters, because you saw this team struggle in that second half when Patrick Mahomes went out. So you're talking about a Buffalo Bills team that's not going to care one bit, that's had their share of playoff droughts here in recent history. They're coming in riding a lot of momentum, and if Patrick Mahomes is not anywhere near 100%, this may be one of those situations where the Buffalo Bills may get another crack at the Super Bowl for the first time since the mid-'90s.
A big part of that game yesterday is going to carry over into the offseason, and it was the play where Daniel Sorensen and Rashard Higgins had their play at the goal line. And I struggle with this, and you and I have had a lot of conversations about player safety and the rules and that sort of thing. It's tackle football, right? So we understand that.
Yep.
They've taken a lot of steps because you believe who you want. They've gotten sued. Let's call it what it is, right? To put rules in place to protect the players. You see people, primarily Cleveland fans, that was targeting. Well, it's not college football, right? So you don't have targeting per se. That play was not reviewable.
Nope.
Good football play. I mean, you look at that, your thoughts as you saw that. It definitely affected, I believe, the outcome of the game, though.
It did, and I don't hate it as much as a lot of people did. I know a lot of people say, well, if that's on any other part of the field, is going to be favored the offense. How many calls can go for the offense? Can we get something as a defensive player that works in our favor? Yes, we understand if nobody clearly recovers the fumble, it's supposed to go back to the offense. In any other part of the field, any yard line that you can speak of, if that ball is fumbled out of bounds, it always goes back to the offense. But when you're talking about protecting that end zone, the end zone is precious commodity. You can't just let anybody get into the end zone. And I understand that it's a huge penalty to give the ball back to the other team, but I'm okay with it because it is one that incentivizes taking care of the football. You can't just cheat your way into the end zone, and it has to be a different set of rules, unlike the rest of the 99 yards. If you get in there, you have to earn your way in there.
And I completely agree. Listen, anytime you fumble the football, you give up possession, right? What I mean by that is B-Train say, I fumble, you're on the defensive end. When that ball is loose, it belongs as much to you as it does to me. As soon as I fumble it, I lose possession of that football. So if it goes out of the end zone, anytime a non-possessed ball goes out of the other team's end zone, it goes back the other way. On a kickoff, everything.
Yeah.
I mean, everything. So I don't know why people have such heartburn with it. Don't fumble the ball.
Look, I understand the other 98 yards of the field. If that ball is fumbled, it goes back to the offense. I'm okay with that. But when you start talking about scoring and for a defense to give up points on the board, it shouldn't be that easy where you can just get the ball back on the one. There has to be some sort of penalty for losing control of the football when you're that close. Like, I don't understand why people are so up in arms. Are you just so enamored with scoring points and just seeing that number light up like on the scoreboard, like it's a pinball machine? I don't get it. But there has to be some incentive to play defense, because otherwise – why would you play defense if everything that you see as far as rules are concerned are in the favor of the offense?
And your guy, Shannon Sharp, to your point about defense getting the calls, and Shannon, obviously one of the all-time great offensive players, he even defended the play itself,
right.
the targeting call that people were looking for. He said, look, you get that play on the goal line all the time.
Sure.
And you look at it, the receiver was parallel to the ground with his head going forward. The defensive player parallel to the ground, and they just met. And I think part of it, and where people don't like the college rule, is intent. It has to be part of that. Where you're going out, and a lot of time the targeting is, a defenseless receiver, a guy that you're looking to perhaps injure.
Right.
And this was a football play with two guys going, and they just happened to meet.
Yep.
And whether it was helmet to helmet, head to head, or if the helmet grazed off the shoulder pad, I didn't break it down, but that's a football play, and that's where I look at it and say, look, so many people don't like these rules that have been put in place to protect the quarterback, to protect the wide receivers, as you said, and then to expect you're going to call it in that situation. I think that's a stretch.
I mean, it was a controversial play, but I still don't believe that it was the play that actually determined the outcome of the game. For me, the gutsiest call of the game was 4th and 1. After Chad Henne had already given everything that he possibly could, I don't think he could have made another step with that. It was a 12-yard scramble. It was like 4th or 3rd and 13, and he got 12 of it. But then for him to have the trust of his head coach, and for the head coach to put them in empty in that situation, at some point Tyreek Hill is going to get his hands on that ball. And to have him the one thing that I didn't like about the Cleveland Browns is every time Tyreek Hill was in trips and he was the third guy, he was always the target. Hello, can we find a way to bracket this guy? Can we find a way to double team him? Because you knew he was better than anybody that Cleveland put out there on the defensive side, and there was no question he was going to get the ball. He put his foot in the ground on the inside, took a quick jab outside, and that play was already over. And the guts of Andy Reid to make that call, one, and then for the team to pay it off by executing, that just shows why this team has been so successful and why they're hosting their third straight AFC Championship.
Chad Henne comes in, he goes 6 for 8, 66 yards. He had 2 rushes and the long for 13. And Andy Reid, and this is a topic for another conversation later on. Eric Bieniemy, why that man's not a head coach, I don't know, but obviously his.
I don't think Kansas City's complaining.
No, not at all, and that was going to be my point. His thumbprint's all over this as well in terms of getting this team ready and to have your backup quarterback. Because how many times have we seen that here in this town, certainly, and all around the league, where you have a backup quarterback comes in and they're not ready. They're not, and it's not a physical thing usually. Right. It's a mentally prepared into the game plan to understand exactly what you have to do, and he did just enough.
Yes, he did,
to get that win for Kansas City.
Mike, I'm going to ask you a question really quick, and I have kind of an answer for it, but I want to hear your thoughts. And my thought is this: if all's fair, if this is week 7 in the NFL season, is there any way that Patrick Mahomes is on the field the following week with that concussion?
No.
So, because the stakes are higher, are you still going to chance your $500 million quarterback? I know what the stakes are. It's for an opportunity to go to the Super Bowl. You just went last year and you won last year. Is there any scenario that you can think of that would say, maybe we ought to look at this guy's long-term health? Right. And start Chad Henne and sit
and particularly
Patrick Mahomes
when you're
for the AFC Championship.
Right, particularly when you're talking about a concussion.
Particularly a concussion.
Right,
combined with a possible turf
whatever
toe.
else is going on down there, right? But like I'm saying, like the turf toe, if that's it is a high ankle sprain, whatever maladies you suffer through, right? You gut it up, right?
Shoot it up.
Whatever.
Yep. Shoot it
but
up.
when you're talking about a concussion, and you've seen now, you have proof positive what happens to players' bodies to their brains.
We all saw him stumble.
We saw him stumble, so there's no question.
We all saw it.
Right? Mm-hmm. So, yeah, to me, I your point is well taken. But you know the whole story going into next weekend's game is going to be that. What the headline right now on ESPN.com is, what do they have to do to get him into the game?
Mike, I'm going to tell you like this. I love life. I love the life that I live. I love my physical health. I love being able to play with my kids and come and go as I please. I'm telling you right now, if I'm Patrick Mahomes, there is no way that you are keeping me off that field. Even if they tell me the chances of me having long-term damage from getting on that field, this is the AFC Championship game. As a competitor, there is no doubt for an opportunity to be a two-time Super Bowl participant and immortalize myself and put myself in a different class of quarterback that I hadn't been previous to that game, there's nothing that I wouldn't risk to be on that field. Yep. And I know that doesn't make sense, but I'm telling you as a former player, if I'm in that situation, as a defensive player, as a defensive lineman, knowing how many times I have the possibility of getting my head hit and scrambled on a given play, there is no way that you're taking that helmet from me. I am getting on that field.
So that's 2021 Bertrand Berry talking, and I get it. I agree with it. If Bertrand Berry 6 years into your career is in that situation, do you have the same mindset?
Yes, because it's the Super Bowl. It's not every day that you get an opportunity to play in a Super Bowl, Mike. That's what we play for.
Yeah.
And when you're that close, when you are so close, when you are 60 minutes away from an opportunity to putting a ring on your finger and being immortalized again and being in a different category, those are the type of conversations that you get put into now that will last forever. They'll talk about you for years long after you're gone. And so is the risk worth it? Hell yes.
Meanwhile, on the other side, don't mean to shortchange this game, Buffalo wasn't a beautiful game by any stretch of the imagination, 17-3.
Yeah.
Weather was a factor, and it wasn't the snow and things like that. It was the wind.
Yeah.
How many times did you play in Buffalo?
I played in Buffalo. I was in the division with them when I first came out of Indianapolis. So we were up there at least 3 times, and I think so maybe 4 or 5 times I played in Buffalo.
And the weather always, I mean, even because it even seems like in the fall when it's nice weather, you know, the wind is always in it. I mean, they always have the picture of, Niagara Falls and the blimp and all that.
It's funny. The game that I remember playing with the Cardinals was the game that Larry didn't play, the time that he didn't catch a pass. Or I should say he played, but he didn't catch a pass, was the October 2004 game. And the weather was so crazy then, and you just never knew what you were going to get. If you had a game scheduled at Buffalo past September, you were nervous because you knew that the possibility of the weather playing a major factor was always going to be a possibility. And I know for a lot of Buffalo fans, they were wishing and hoping and praying that Cleveland pulled that thing out because the game would have then been hosted in Buffalo, and those fans would have absolutely lost their mind.
They talk about Josh Allen and how he's developed and grown into a quarterback, but they talk about his path to the NFL through Laramie, Wyoming, helped him to play in Buffalo.
That's right.
Because I've never been to Buffalo, but I've been to Laramie, Wyoming.
Had their wings. The wings.
And the wind blows constantly.
Yes.
The wind blows sideways. It's crazy.
Yes.
How much the wind blows. So, he honed his craft as close to an environment.
He was built for Buffalo.
Exactly.
and go ahead.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And obviously taking advantage of it and the love that Buffalo has for him and now he has for Buffalo. It's a match that they're all thriving. And that coaching staff, you talk about Andy Reid, they put together a game plan, particularly defensively, that took Lamar Jackson out. And we talked a lot about him last week.
Yes.
And, I think, and reading some of the material out of Baltimore now, that old adage about quarterbacks get too much blame in the loss and not enough credit in the win is definitely true right now for the Baltimore Ravens.
So the thing that I take away from this weekend, when you start talking AFC, one, there are a lot of good quarterbacks in the AFC. And when I start thinking about that class of, I think it was 2018 with Baker Mayfield and Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, that's a pretty dang good draft class. And the fact that they're all in the same conference, they're all fighting for the opportunity to get to the Super Bowl the same way, That's going to be one of those where I think we talk about that class for many, many years to come. The thing that I say in specific to that game between Buffalo and Baltimore, the Baltimore Ravens have got to find a passing game.
Yeah.
They are so one-dimensional when you think of Lamar Jackson and what he is asked to do for this team to be successful on offense. It's really not fair. I understand they've got some pieces. They've got a Marquise Brown, who I think is going to be at some point a really good wide receiver in the NFL, but he's not a number one. I look at their tight ends. They've got really good tight ends. Mark Andrews, I think he's a guy that, if not for everybody that you've seen, that guy Travis Kelce and all these other great tight ends, he would be considered a top flight tight end. But at some point, you have to be able to stretch teams vertically. You can't just run your way to a Super Bowl. It's not going to work in 2021 in the NFL. One, you can't ever get down more than 5-6 points. If you're down 7-10 points, forget it. We saw him overcome that, but that was against an inferior team that he could easily make that ground up against. It's a referendum on. I think they've maxed this offense out as far as the production that they can get. They've done it as well as they could do it last year. It didn't get them a playoff win. They came back, got a hot streak at the end of the season this year. They couldn't get past the team that knew how to go down the field with the prolific offense. So they've got to find a way to switch this up and give Lamar some help.
Yeah, they've got some off-season work. I mean, you look at what they have to do to build that offense, particularly the skill players around that
receivers. You got to get some receivers.
Got to get some receivers into that offense. I agree with you about Mark Andrews, a guy that we saw do his thing high school-wise right over here at Desert Mountain in Scottsdale. But, you've got to have somebody that can stretch the field because, at some point, the toll that the way he plays, and you saw it, when, he went out, at the end of concussion as well, right? Yeah. So, all right. So your AFC is set. You've got Buffalo.
Big shout to Buffalo. We didn't really talk a lot of Buffalo. Big ups to them. They did what they needed to do. I'm nervous for Kansas City.
And I think to your point earlier, the big question is whether or not if Patrick Mahomes is not able to go, because Buffalo, unlike other teams, you talk about Tampa now having to go up to, and we'll get to that in a minute, go to Green Bay. Buffalo don't care.
No.
Buffalo will go wherever because they play in worse.
That's right.
So whatever you're going to throw at them at Arrowhead Stadium, they've seen worse. Yeah. They practice in worse every day in Buffalo.
They eat it for breakfast on the side with the wings.
Yeah, absolutely. Nicely done. All right, we'll break here. That's what I like about doing a podcast. I was looking at Sean. I was like, damn, if this was radio, people would be screaming at you. Hey, we do 22 minutes, 20, whatever. We don't care, whatever.
It's all good.
But we'll take a break real quick. On the other side, we'll do some NFC breakdown. That's
just
coming
getting
up
warmed
next
up, man.
On Train and Grose.
B-Train. Mike Grose.
Who that?
Train and Grose.
It's like radio. I was saying, like, we could go long on a segment, nobody cares.
That's right.
But on the flip side, it's like radio. When we're in a break, we record that too.
Yeah. I mean,
make an all outtakes.
The near misses.
Podcast,
how about that?
Yeah.
Call it near misses.
Hey, thanks for following us at Train and Grose on Twitter, and love the feedback we get. If you're a subscriber on iTunes or Spotify, any of those other platforms, love hearing from you.
That's right.
Rate us. Give us some feedback. If you want us to talk about something, let us know.
Good.
At Train and Grose on Twitter. All right, we talked about the AFC, and from a score standpoint, you look at the games similar, but, man, I guess you got to start yesterday's game. And the numbers that Tom Brady keeps putting up, particularly postseason numbers, are ridiculous. And there was some question. I think it's been answered by this point. When they broke up New England and Tom Brady.
Who got the better end?
Yeah, or who's thriving?
Yeah, for real.
Right? Who misses who in the breakup?
Yeah.
And it's definitely Tom Brady landed on his feet, literally and figuratively. And the other thing that he did, because you and I talked about this at the beginning of the season, because it seemed to be that Tom Brady and Bruce Arians got off to a little bit of a rough start where Bruce Arians was questioning him and maybe giving him a little bit of Bruce Arians type feedback that Tom Brady wasn't used to getting, calling him out publicly and that sort of thing.
Did he like it?
Did he like it? How was he going to respond? Well, you're playing in the NFC Championship game after you go in and beat a team that had beaten you twice during the regular season.
Division opponent.
And 30-20, and I think you look at it and say that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were good enough offensively, but their defense, I thought, stepped up. And, whether it was Drew Brees getting old, which he is, made him look old, some combination thereof. But nonetheless, Tampa Bay advances. Now they get Green Bay next weekend in the NFC Championship game.
You got to give credit to the defense. I thought they really held the day because I thought both quarterbacks looked old for the majority of the game. Tom Brady made a few more plays than Drew Brees, but Drew Brees was awful.
Yeah.
Let's just put that out there. I understand all the sentiments, and this was almost a victory lap for him, and everybody wants to talk about what he's meant to New Orleans, and all of that is true. I remember playing against him in San Diego. Of course, he's a former Boilermaker, so he doesn't get much love from me, but he does get a lot of respect because he's a fellow Texan, so there's a lot of mixed emotions. I just think if you look at the game at face value, it wasn't a great game.
No, I would agree with that.
But the fact that Tom Brady continues to be that guy that things always seem to work out in his favor, you can either really hate it and just be a hater, or you can really appreciate one of the all-time greats at the time of his greatness. We're able to sit here and witness it. I wasn't around for Johnny Unitas. I wasn't around for a lot of Roger Staubach's career. I have a lot of respect for Joe Montana and Terry Bradshaw, but I didn't see the majority of their careers, and I wasn't around to really understand what they were able to accomplish. But I've been around. I played against Tom Brady. I know who he is. I've seen his whole career go from Michigan to New England to now here with Tampa Bay. And how about the fact that I'm going to throw this shade out at all you Cowboys fans. He's been in the NFC for exactly 1 year, and he's already been to an NFC championship game where you haven't been in the last 24 years. So eat that, Cowboys fans.
Take that.
But the thing about Tom Brady is he's a guy that just he continues to find a way. And the thing that impresses me the most is that right around their bye week, when they were supposed to have had that round of golf that they couldn't have because the NFL said that they couldn't do that, it seems as if Bruce Arians took a step back and Tom Brady took a step forward. He finally understood, like, hey, I'm a guy that knows how to do this on the field. Yes, you're a great coach, and yes, you're the favorite uncle that everybody likes to have fun with and have a good time. But when it comes to actually winning in between those stripes, Tom Brady is going to be the guy that's going to get you there. And I think he allowed him to have more input on the offense and how the offense was going to run. That looked like the New England Patriots of old, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers last night, and that is a very successful formula. And I think it's something that could possibly, if Aaron Rodgers and that team is not on their A game, they could find themselves hosting the first Super Bowl in their home stadium in league history.
That's an interesting concept. I mean, and we'll see. I mean, I just, to your point about it being a game that Tampa won, Tom Brady did enough.
Just enough.
And you wonder
but the defense did the thing.
Well, and I'm going to get to that in a minute. The defense did enough, but you wonder how that translates heading north and against the Packers team. The other thing, though, the numbers, when you look at Tom Brady, you play a long time, longevity, you're going to get numbers. But, the other thing is he's taken advantage and delivered in these opportunities. But when you talk about a guy who's played 20 seasons in the NFL, playing in his 14th conference championship game.
I didn't even play 14 years, Mike.
Right? And
so
he's
only, just let you know.
You think about that. 6 years, so 30% of his career, he hasn't played in a conference championship game. And you think about how hard that is in the National Football League.
Just to get to one. I got to one, and it took me all 12 of my years to get to that one.
So when Tom Brady finally does retire, they'll throw all the numbers at you. But, it's about winning at the end.
Yes.
And the fact that he did that, right?
Yes.
And I get it. Like, I'm a Michigan fan. I mean, but Tom Brady in the lore of – now, his stature obviously has risen after 20 years in the NFL. But you think about Tom Brady when he left Michigan.
He wasn't even a clear-cut number one. Him and Drew Hansen went at it all the time. They were back and forth.
Right. But you think if you just look at Tom Brady as a college quarterback, right? But what he's done to that and taken advantage of it and that. The other thing that I texted you during this game, and it could have been much different, the outcome. The Tampa Bay special teams, especially early, were awful. The punt coverage was terrible.
Yes.
I quick did a perusal of the Tampa Bay coaching staff to see if Amos Jones that Amos Jones. Because when you and I were doing the radio show together, that's when Bruce Arians and Amos Jones were stinking it up.
And he defended him to the death.
To the death.
Yes.
And by the way, Amos Jones still is in the National Football League. I believe he's on the Giants staff, but not part of that. But Tampa held them to field goals in those first two. But 6-0 is a hell of a lot different than 14-0. Thank you very much, Captain Obvious. But to me, that was really the difference.
Yeah.
Keeping them out of the end zone early after those special team gaffes. But and again, it goes back to Bruce Arians and and you and I talked about this. Every coach is different in their philosophy about how they approach special teams, and it felt like, and maybe it continues to be, almost an afterthought with Bruce Arians.
I felt bad for Drew Brees because this was the first time that I really had pity on Drew Brees, and mind you, this was his last game, and so everybody's going to remember all the good things. I remember Drew Brees ending my career, and I don't have a lot of sympathy for somebody who ended my career.
Yeah.
But looking at Drew and what he's meant to the game and what he's done while in the game, you have to give him his due and you have to give him his roses. But last night, I thought was probably his weakest performance I've seen in quite some time. Remember now, the touchdown pass that the Saints had was a touchdown from Jameis Winston. That wasn't Drew Brees.
Exactly.
That was a trick play. They had to bring in the backup. And Taysom Hill didn't even suit up.
Right.
So a lot of their offense was actually on the sidelines the majority of this game. And we saw Drew Brees get a little exposed because the one thing that you saw Todd Bowles do, he crowded the front of the line and said, "We dare you to beat us over the top." And Drew Brees just couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Number one receiver, 0 catches in a game. First time in his career that Mike has not had a catch in a game. And you choose the divisional round of the playoffs to not get a single catch, something's amiss. And I think it's really Drew Brees' arm and his ability to throw the football. And it's a shame because the mind is still there. Yep. The body is relatively healthy considering what he had to overcome just to be on the field. Mm-hmm. But that arm is just not there. It's not NFL standard.
And you saw it. They had the camera follow him off the field, and he did that one glimpse over the shoulder looking back. And to me, that's where you kind of got the sense that it was really over. You heard people talk about it. Jay Glazer with his breaking news at the outset on the Fox pregame show. That's all fine and good.
Yep.
But you watch a man's body language when he's doing something, and that look over the shoulder back to the field one last time.
Yeah.
That's when I said, all right, and I mean, obviously the performance kind of
dictated
that,
it.
Right?
Father Time's undefeated. But there were 2 instances, Mike, where I saw it was really over for Drew Brees. One, the time was winding down on the sidelines. He was sitting by himself. He just had this look on his face. Yeah. I've been there. I had that look on my face. And when he and Tom Brady embraced after the game, that was more than just a normal quarterback-to-quarterback embrace. I know that those guys have a special league and they do their thing where, they take their helmets off, they have the hats on, and they do the congratulatory handshake to one another. But the embrace that they had, I think they both knew.
Yeah.
I think there was some talk before the game because you saw them and we've seen video afterwards of Drew Brees' family, embracing Tom Brady, and Tom Brady throws his son a touchdown pass with the Nerf ball and all this kind of stuff, and reminded me of when Ray Lewis and Peyton Manning got together at the end of Ray Lewis's career, and they were talking, and you just see 2 all-time greats just having a normal conversation like normal people. You just don't have that. Yep. Any old time. If they were both planning to play beyond this year, I don't think they have that same kind of conversation. So those 2 instances showed to me that I think this really was the end. And if it is, bravo to Drew Brees on a brilliant career.
Meanwhile, Green Bay took care of L.A. And for me, the surprise maybe was the Rams defense. At 32 points. I mean, they were going to struggle. Jared Goff, what's his health? But 32 points, when the Rams are doing that,
they're in trouble.
Yeah, they're in trouble. Because that's not their game.
Now,
obviously, they talk about injuries and how they, the emotion from Aaron Donald, knowing that he couldn't go, and you just saw him literally break down on the sideline.
I love that. Too,
and I saw you sent that out.
Yeah.
And I get that. But when you don't have all your players. You saw what happened, 32-18, and it didn't even feel that close.
No, it didn't feel that close at all. And the thing about it, Mike, is I think the defense finally succumbed to the idea that the offense was just not going to be able to bail them out. You saw when they were playing Seattle, it was a team that they were familiar with. They knew who they were. They knew how to play against the Seattle Seahawks. Right. They knew how to corral Russell Wilson and slow that offense down. Aaron Rodgers is playing at another level. He's probably the MVP of the league. He's a guy that is finding his weapons, and with all of the talk that went in, we keep talking about this, but how he was dead and buried basically after the draft when they bring in his replacement and they didn't get him help, and he just come off an NFC Championship game and it wasn't really close against the San Francisco 49ers, and how could you do this to Aaron Rodgers? Are you pushing him out the door? Well, I think a lot of that talk was premature because he and Matt LaFleur seem to have that synergy that you need in order to make a championship run. And I think unlike him and Mike McCarthy, I think these guys do genuinely like each other. They're probably similar in age. They're around the same age. They probably have the same interest. And the fact that Aaron Rodgers seems to have that perfect zen if you start talking about the play calls and the ability to still get the ball down the field. Everything that they call seems to be turned to gold. It's like Matt LaFleur has the Midas touch, and Aaron Rodgers still has that golden arm. That's a deadly combination.
We talk about Buffalo not worried about going to Kansas City to play with the weather. What is it? You played Arizona, warm weather team.
Ooh, yes.
So you got Tampa looking to go to Green Bay, 50% chance of snow showers, temperatures in the upper teens for Sunday in Green Bay right now. Obviously that could change a little bit, but that's a big change. So you're not going to the Dome. You're not playing there in sunny Florida.
Yep.
You know, that's a big change for the third week of January.
And I like it, too, because I like the idea that the Buccaneers, have to go on the road to try to get back home.
Yeah.
You've got to go to Green Bay, one of the more challenging places to play, in order to get the Super Bowl back in your backyard. And you bring in the Tom Brady, one of the all-time greats. If there's anybody that can and drive the narrative, that story is going to be one that if he were to pull this off, Mike, and get past Aaron Rodgers as hot as he is, and then you're Tom Brady and you host the Super Bowl at your home stadium, the first team to do that after a guy has twice as many wins as any other quarterback in NFL history, I mean, at some point you just got to say, okay, enough. He's the best ever. He's just the best, damn it, and we're just going to give it to him. We can't take it anymore. He's just too damn good.
He's got, if that happens, and there's a lot of ifs in that.
There's a lot of ifs.
But if you do all of that and you go out, you bring a Super Bowl to your home stadium
and win it,
you got to go then.
You got to go.
You just got to drop the mic and walk off.
I mean, my work is done.
What else can you do?
I mean, that's when you just, you give the kiss and the peace sign and I'm out. But I look at Green Bay and I just say it's going to take at least 30 points. You've got to score 30 to beat them.
Yeah.
Because what Aaron Rodgers is doing on offense and that opportunistic defense, they understand that they got 30 points to play with, so they can be as aggressive as they want to be. They don't have a great dominating defense, but they've got a defense enough to where those Smith brothers up front can get after you. If they get into a track meet, kind of reminds me of the old Indianapolis Colts, where they knew Peyton Manning was going to put points on the board, and all they had to do was pin their ears back and go after the opposing quarterback. And they can do that very well. Now, if you see this team come in and they run the ball, if Tampa comes in and tries to run the ball with Leonard Fournette and Ronald Jones, I don't know. There's a chance. But, again, if they pull this off, this would be one of those stories that, I mean, you couldn't even sell it in Hollywood, Mike. No. It would be so cheesy, so over the top. And one thing we talked about real quick before I give you the mic back is I look at this Tampa Bay team, it reminds me so much of the 2018 New England Patriots. Yep. Tom did just enough to let the defense be the catalyst.
That's a good point.
And so, again, there was that power struggle with B.A. and Tom, like whose team is it? What offense are they going to run? What's going to be successful? And for a while there, I wasn't sure who was going to win out. And keep in mind, this is a rematch of Week 6, where the Tampa Bay Buccaneers jumped all over Aaron Rodgers, but that was in Tampa Bay.
Yep.
So there's a lot of different storylines behind this game. I can't wait.
What's the over-under on how many times we hear Battle of the Bays this weekend? I hate it already. I hate it. Pump the brakes for me real quick. I hate it already. Battle of the Bays. No, please stop Battle of the Bays.
Now, the thing that I can't wait, though, is the battle of the two number 12 all-time greats.
That's fine. I'll give you that.
The battle of the 12s, I'm all in for that. Sign me up all day for that.
Battle of the 12s, I like that.
Yeah.
Battle of the Bays, no.
Battle of the Bays, I mean, I think a lot of people are probably going to catch up to that probably around halftime. Like, that's what they've been talking about, Battle of the Bays.
The other thing, And I can't remember if we talked. It was good to have Tony Romo back in the booth this weekend. I don't remember because we had a CBS game. I forget when it was, and we were stuck with Boomer.
Yeah, because Tony got something happened with Tony.
He had to quarantine, I think.
Yeah, it wasn't good.
He had COVID issues, so he was out. Yeah. Your disdain for Boomer.
He is so bad.
Yeah, it's rough. It's rough without.
I hope he doesn't listen to our podcast.
I hope he does. I hope he has something to say because, hey, any publicity is
That's
good
true.
publicity.
This knucklehead in Arizona talking like a fool. Doesn't even know.
Oh, hey, let's talk about it.
500-some yards as a Cardinal quarterback. Mad props for that. All right. Hey, on the other side, some news and notes. We let stuff build up. We had a short show last week, so we're going to get to some stuff on the other side. You're listening to Train and Grose. We'll be right back.
Train and Grose.
Final segment. No. We're going to do a quick. Okay. I wasn't paying attention. So we're going to do.
Stop. Take
We're
two.
going to do pump the brakes.
Yeah,
so I do get a segment.
You're doing a segment, news and notes, but just don't give me.
Don't do a deep dive.
Don't do a deep dive on Harden. I want you to save that for pump the brakes.
So the Houston will be. Houston's a mess. So we don't.
Houston, we have a problem.
Right. Yeah. So that's what. Okay. I'm sorry.
Here we go. Take two. Ready?
So we call this segment the "Oh by the way."
Oh by the.
Here.
Oh by the way.
We go for take two.
Train and Grose.
What, you weren't listening to me?
I'm always listening, brother.
No, that's Sean. Sean's like,
I got you.
He's going to call Karen because I get that all the time at home. How many times do I have to tell you what we're doing here? Hey, news and notes. It's been a while since we've gotten into this. Your hometown.
Ooh, Houston, we got a big-ass problem with all of the sports.
All the sports.
Yeah, it's not a good look in my home city.
And I know you're not a Texans guy.
No, I'm not at all.
I mean, because that was.
I'm an Oilers guy.
Yeah, you're an Oilers guy. But, man.
Through and through.
You hear, and look, I'm from Detroit, so we know bad football. We know dysfunctional football.
Yeah.
And it seems like Houston's on that track right now. Here's one of the new franchises in the National Football League, and it was really well run for a while.
Yeah.
Beautiful stadium and all that. And now, it's ugly.
It's ugly, and I think it started a couple years ago when McNair came out and said the inmates can't run the asylum. I think that started the bad blood, and I think it's progressively gotten worse. And you've seen the recent events where the general manager is hired and Deshaun Watson is not given that superstar treatment that a lot of other players, a lot of other quarterbacks are given around the league. And he seems to be very dissatisfied with the direction of the team. And keep in mind, this is a team that has won the AFC South a number of times in the most recent history. So this isn't a team that has been cellar dwellers.
No.
For a while. I mean, Deshaun Watson has been a winner for the most part since he's gotten into the league. And for this team to have spun out of control this year, it just seemed like everything happened all at once. You get rid of DeAndre Hopkins, you fire Bill O'Brien, and now you've got this situation where the general manager is gone too, and you want to have the input of the guy that is most responsible for your team's success. And yet he seemed like he's kind of an afterthought, and he's not taking it very well.
Yeah, no. And meanwhile, down the road, the basketball team, James Harden gets his way out of town.
Another superstar in Houston wants his way out.
And it's and the thing that strikes me is you can see how this works in the NBA.
Yeah.
Right? Because the numbers and the dynamics are so different. And that's fine. James Harden didn't want to be there. And when you're that big a cog on a smaller wheel, meaning just numbers wise, you can see where you force that, and you just gotta make it work. It's hard to see how it works in the NFL with a 53-man roster and the salary cap and all these things, but it's something we'll keep an eye on as we go along. Meanwhile, here in town, the Phoenix Suns have been impacted by the COVID situation in a big way. And you look at it, and we talk, comparing this NBA season to last, or the way they wrapped up last NBA season with the bubble. You see what happens, and on the one hand, you're going to take the cautions, you're going to do the contact tracing just to make sure, but on the other hand, it's tough because you start to cancel games and move them around. And this was a team that was playing well, and you wonder what the impact of this disruption is going to be as they get ready to hit the floor again.
I think if you're Monty Williams, I think if you're Chris Paul and you're Devin Booker, you're a little concerned because at the beginning of the season, everything was clicking, everything was rolling. These guys had great energy on the field or on the court. They had great synergy, if you will. They got along with each other. You saw at one point the bath in the locker room after the historic day. I think it was for Mikal Bridges, if I'm not mistaken. And everything seemed to be going in the right way. And I think this is a referendum, if you will, Mike, on Adam Silver not being more aggressive and being more demonstrative about getting bubble-type situations. Yeah, you don't have to all go to Orlando like you did last year, but I think having these guys secluded to some degree in their own cities would have made a lot more sense than what they're doing now, because the NBA, who was at the forefront of this thing last year with COVID, now they seem to be back in the pack with every other sport where they're having these situations where they're having to cancel games and these players are having to be out and they can't put enough players out there on the court for them to have the games, and it just seems like a big mess. And I'm not going to put it all at Adam Silver, because I think the players as a whole wanted this freedom. They didn't want to go back to a bubble for a second year, and I think you're seeing the consequences of that decision. And I think if they had to do it all over again, I think maybe they would have had a little bit of a different take on having during the season guys have to be somewhere concentrated and not necessarily having all the freedom that they enjoy.
After the hot start, the Suns lose 3 games to COVID, as we said, and came back today after the break and lost. So we'll see. But, this disruption, it's going to be a test, and we'll see how they do. Meanwhile, I know you wanted to get a word in about Luka Doncic, everything he's doing, and how I think the word you used as we were talking about it beforehand, ridiculous.
Ridiculous. He was a guy that was on the MVP watch this year anyway, after how he had finished last season and what they had done in the playoffs and how they pushed the Clippers to 6 games, and then they finally were able to get rid of them. But Luka, this was the natural progression for him, and I think he has done that and some. And looking at some of his performances already in the early season, what he did against Chicago just the other night, he had 30 points at halftime.
Yeah.
And some of the plays, I mean, he had a behind-the-back pass where he was going to the middle of the paint. He goes behind the back against one defender and then throws a behind-the-back pass again. So it was like a double loop behind his back to get an assist, which I think was the play that got him a triple-double in the first half. He's just playing at another level. Yes, we know LeBron is still there. Yes, we know Giannis Antetokounmpo is still there. We know there are a lot of still great players. Kevin Durant's coming back, and he looks terrific. But Luka Doncic just seems like he's that guy that's next in line. Like, they are building him up, and he's doing everything that he can to really deliver on the goods.
Yeah, if they give him even just a little bit of help around that roster down there in Dallas, it'll be remarkable. They're 6-6, and he's doing the great individual performances that hasn't necessarily translated overall to wins and losses. Meanwhile, locally, and I didn't even tell you we were doing this, but a guy I know you got to know a little bit and did a Fox Sports deal with him, Shane Doan, back with the Arizona Coyotes. And for me, obviously, we talk hockey a lot when I get to do a radio show or whatever, and I just love the hockey, right? And I drag you along in those conversations sometimes.
I come with you. I'm with you.
Crespin, too. He's not, he doesn't like the original 6 talk or anything like that. But I think it was a wonderful move in the community for this new ownership group to figure out a way to approach Shane Doan, number one, because Shane Doan, like everybody else, it's just not going to open the door and say, you got to come back.
Right.
Approach him in a way that you've got a meaningful role, but they keep him in the fold. They keep him in the family. Obviously, when you look at Arizona athletes, great professional athletes, Larry Fitzgerald by far and away at the top of the list. His entire career as an Arizona Cardinal. If it is over, or if he does play again, it will be in a Cardinals uniform. Same thing with Shane Doan. Now it's hockey in Arizona, so he doesn't get the notoriety or the necessarily attention that Larry Fitzgerald does. But here's a guy that toiled in relative obscurity in Arizona, didn't win a lot. But he's a great guy, a great community guy.
Yes, he is.
And for this franchise to keep him in the fold, keep him happy is really important.
I think it was the only move that they could do, Mike, because most people couldn't name 4 Coyotes on the team right now.
Absolutely
and
right.
And when you start thinking about the Phoenix Coyotes, or is it the Arizona Coyotes or Phoenix Coyotes?
Arizona Coyotes.
Arizona Coyotes. I had it right the first time. That he is the face of that team still. And you have to be able to somehow, some way include him. You can't shut him out. You have to be able to bridge the gap between the days of old in the days of now, because if you don't have a Shane Doan endorsing what you're selling, then a lot of fan base who are very fond of Shane Doan are probably going to turn their loyalty somewhere else, because they're looking at, okay, if you're willing to treat this guy who stuck it out, who had opportunities to leave but stuck it out here, if you're not going to be loyal to him, why should I be loyal to this fan base? Why or to this team? Why should I put my money into this organization with buying, the gear and all the different things, the jerseys, the hats, and all the stuff that goes along with it, if it really is just cold-hearted business and there's not that sense of family and sense of unity?
Yeah, the previous ownership group and the front office handled that terribly.
The way that they let him go was
the way they let it go, and it was almost like they gave him the cold shoulder for a while. And I get it, whatever else. And like I said, he's a great guy, great community guy, but he's a human too. You got feelings.
No question.
And so, like I said, it was a wonderful move by this ownership group to figure out a way to do it and do it in a way that engaged him, because, again, he didn't want it to be a token move, and he didn't want him to be some sort of figurehead.
Yeah.
So do it in a way that's meaningful for him, and to get him back in is huge. I mean, still, look, they're the fourth horse in a 4-team race in this town. This doesn't change that. But to your point about that core group of fans that you have, this was an important move.
And I think the biggest thing about it all, Mike, is Shane is such a nice guy.
Nice guy.
Even though he wasn't the best hockey player in the world, he was such a nice guy, and he was so great in the community. He did everything that he could to really bring the attention to Arizona Coyotes, and he did his best to try to win on the ice, and then the community relations, he was as good as gold. So when you got a truly good guy that's loyal, you have to do right by him.
Yeah, no question. All right, now that's it. Now,
That's it?
I get it right. I look at the script.
All right.
Now I know what to do.
All right.
We're done with this segment. That's how it works here. We'll step aside here, and on the other side, he reads off the piece of paper. We'll come back and do Pump the Brakes on Training Grose. Welcome back. Segment where we talk about ASU hockey.
Yeah.
Is that a no? Pump the brakes. We're not doing ASU hockey. It's Pump the Brakes. It's our favorite time of the week here on Training Grose. So that's where Sean Crespin keeps us honest.
So here's what we're going to do.
Yes, sir.
Mostly a NFL playoffs version of Pump the Brakes, but we got some NBA mixed in today.
Let's
got
do
some
it.
pop culture on the back end as well. All right, so Pump the Brakes will start in the National Football League. Andy Reid showed some cojones this past weekend, winning that game in the fourth quarter. So Pump the Brakes or not, B-Train will start with you. Andy Reid, right now, as we speak, the best coach in the National Football League.
Pump the brakes.
Today.
I have a tremendous amount of respect for Andy Reid. I think he's one of the top 3 coaches in the NFL right now, but you cannot put him over Bill Belichick. The jewelry, the hardware says you just can't do it.
I'm talking today.
Today, Bill Belichick still has 6, and Andy Reid still has 1. Mm-hmm. So no matter how you slice it, 6 is greater than 1. Now, when you start talking about play calling and being an innovator and a guy that can put his pieces in the right place, I think Andy Reid is catching up to Bill Belichick. Yeah. But make no mistake, at one point, Bill Belichick in his career was the master at getting the most out of the least, to the tune of 6 Super Bowl championships.
And I think I'm pumping the brakes as well, because you've got the innovation, the play calling, but sometimes it comes down to talent. And if you give Andy Reid Bill Belichick's roster, are we talking about him playing this weekend?
Sure. No, we're not.
And I look at, I think Mike Tomlin's in that conversation as well. And you look at the deficiencies in that roster currently. That's why he's not playing this weekend. But is Mike Tomlin one of the best coaches in the National Football League?
The reason I brought it up, let me give you guys a kind of a wild stat here. So the Chiefs this coming weekend, they'll be the first AFC team in history to host 3 straight conference championship games. Yeah. It's only been done one time in NFL history previously. It was the Philadelphia Eagles from 2002 to 2004, also coached by Andy Reid. Pretty impressive.
Yeah, that's impressive, but he only got to the dance twice in all those AFC championship or all those conference championship games.
Which is fair.
So when you start talking Bill Belichick, he did it on the road. He did it at home. He did it with lots of talent. Randy Moss and those guys, he did it with little talent. He's he's gotten the hardware 6 times. I can't overlook that.
You know what Andy Reid's missing?
What's he missing?
He's missing Tom Brady.
Yeah.
I'm going to go back to what I said before. Tom Brady, 14 times in 20 years.
Yeah.
No, but look, the game plan and the play calling yesterday, amazing. Masterful.
Yeah.
But again, it comes down to some talent.
It helps to have Tyreek Hill, the human
Doesn't
mismatch,
hurt.
on your team.
Doesn't hurt.
Especially for a yard.
Okay,
Yeah.
Drew Brees, we all feel hanging it up. You guys talked about it quite a bit here in today's podcast. Tremendous career. So pump the brakes or not. I'm not talking about Drew Brees here, okay? I'm talking about the Saints.
Okay.
The Saints underachieved in this era with Drew Brees by only getting to one Super Bowl, let alone just winning one. They only got to one. Pump the brakes or not, the Saints underachieved.
I'm going to go with that. I'm not pumping the brakes at all. I mean,
Okay.
you look at it, and it's kind of what we were saying about Andy Reid a minute ago relative to other coaches in his era. Look, you look at the Saints teams and some of the amazing offensive skill and talent that they've had. And when you do the retrospective and I know it's not solely about Drew Brees, but when you look at the Saints during the Drew Brees era, if that's how you want to put it,
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, because I'm not Drew Brees. I'm not
The
knocking
numbers
him at all.
the numbers will stand the test of time.
Yes, they will.
But again, think about a previous era. What do you think about when you think about Dan Marino? What's the
Yeah.
first thing you say about Dan Marino?
No rings.
Right?
No rings.
Yeah.
And so when you look at what the Saints did, it was phenomenal. It was exciting.
Yeah.
And there's nothing, firsthand, there's nothing like a full building in New Orleans.
That's
The way that what that Saints team mean to that city, and when that building's hopping, it's amazing. But the fact that they only got one, that's pretty remarkable.
And again, not knocking Drew for that.
Yeah.
I'm saying the Saints.
It's that and I
Yeah.
can't remember if I said it or not. The Lamar Jackson rule that we were talking about. The quarterback gets way too much credit in the
Yes.
win and too much blame in the loss. But it's the Drew Brees era when you look back at the Saints.
I'm right there with you, Mike. And the thing that I always go back to is there were some lean years in the early 2000s where they were 7-9, 7-9, 7-9.
Yep.
And they basically had you had Drew Brees and you had their head coach, so Sean Payton. So there were times where this team really underachieved. Now, the fact that they only got to one Super Bowl, yes, and the last 4 years were especially brutal considering how they lost.
Yeah, the no calls.
The
and
no calls,
and
the
Diggs.
Stephon Diggs, you know what I mean? And then last year the push off, against the Vikings. I mean, there were some brutal losses in the playoffs, but this team to have only gotten to one with the weapons that Drew Brees had at his disposal, especially around that Super Bowl time where they had the Colstons and Drew and there were so many parts that they should have taken advantage of, and even in recent history, not to have gotten at least to a conference championship or gotten to that Super Bowl and lost. Yeah, I think they've definitely underachieved.
Hey, just look at the numbers too, and again, you're giving your caveat. It's not a Drew Brees
Not a
question
Drew-
necessarily,
yes.
but nearly 81,000 passing yards out of this man.
Yeah.
Like you think at some point
Guys,
it's going to translate.
There
into
has been 12 seasons in the history of the league where a quarterback has thrown for 5,000 yards. Or it's been done 12 times, I should say. 5 of those 12 belong to Drew Brees.
Yeah.
Think about that.
That's
Yeah.
incredible.
And think about this, too. Think about the fact that Drew Brees should have been a Miami Dolphin.
Yeah, they told him he failed his physical.
Well,
He goes
Nick
to New
Saban
Orleans.
didn't want him.
Yeah.
Nick Saban nixed it because of the shoulder surgery, and just think how that would have turned out. If Drew goes to Miami, Nick Saban never goes to Alabama. Who knows
Wow.
where either one of those organizations are right now?
It's crazy.
Next question. Pump the brakes or not? Just flat out, you can get into this as deep as you want or as quick as you want. Deshaun Watson will be a Houston Texan next season. B-Train, pump the brakes or not?
Pump the brakes. I think he takes the basketball route. I think he weasels his way out, and I don't mean that in a derogatory manner towards Deshaun Watson, but it's the only way that he can, because if everything's equal, why would you get rid of a franchise quarterback? One, you just paid him all the money. Two, he's good. He just made the Pro Bowl over a Lamar Jackson. He led the league in passing yards without a DeAndre Hopkins, without a lot of his weapons on the offensive side. There is no way that you get rid of him if all is equal. You try to build around him, but I think for him, he sees the writing on the wall. He is not going to be anywhere near contention with this team. They have mismanaged this organization from top to bottom for a long, long time, And I think the fact that he's not included in a lot of the big decisions, like a lot of the franchise-type quarterbacks are, I think he's had enough, and I think he goes elsewhere.
He's going to be there next year because they can't afford to get rid of him.
Literally.
Literally, they can't afford to look to. Right now, they are $20 million over the salary cap for next season.
They could trade him though.
You got to absorb that though.
Depending when you trade him, before June 1, after June 1.
Either scenario, there are financial hits that escalate that $20 million. And I'm not a capologist. I don't get sure, but you taught me the NFL.
Follow
everything
the money.
else, it's a
Follow
business.
The money.
It's
Bottom
a
line
business. And look, you've got to have it. I mean, if you all the other the moves that they've done to blow this thing up and make the mess that they've got will be compounded even further and bury this franchise. And now I don't know what they got to do. I don't know how they make it right, but I don't see how you do it financially.
Well, the good thing is
we were talking before we started recording.
Yeah.
Unlike the NBA, you can't go through the history of the NFL and say, yeah, remember the last time a guy forced his way out of a town and demanded a trade?
Carson Palmer's the only one I can think of.
And I'm sure the numbers back then were much more manageable for the Bengals.
It took a while. It wasn't at the beginning of the season.
No, it was. He sat out, and it was deep in I think it was week 8 or 9 because the Raiders thought for the first time they had a legitimate chance of making a run.
Right.
But then Jason Campbell got hurt, and that's when they made the trade.
And this is a topic for a whole other conversation. It goes back to how the NFLPA has really hamstrung the players with a lot of things they've signed themselves up for.
Yeah.
Because the franchise quarterback is one thing. The rest of the 53-man roster, particularly once you get deep into that 50, they're voting right then and right there for their personal interest.
Right.
But look, should he be gone? Does he want to be gone? Of course. I think it'll be fascinating to watch them trade him if it actually does happen, because the financial maneuvers and the things that they'll have to do to make it work are going to be remarkable.
If I'm John Lynch and I'm Kyle Shanahan, I'm getting on the phone. I can't get there fast enough. What do you want?
We got to do a whole segment on how this unfolds coming up, because this is fascinating.
If I'm the 49ers, I can't do this fast enough, or the Miami Dolphins.
Yes.
There's a bunch of franchises that would think about it.
The good thing is the
somebody in Houston on the back
Texans have the 3rd overall pick this year. That's the. Oh wait, never mind. They traded that to the Dolphins.
Yeah.
Hey, can we have our draft pick back?
That franchise.
You can have your draft pick back.
Yeah.
I don't think they pick until 3rd round this year. That's
I
the first
know.
time they got
it's a
it.
mess.
It's a disaster.
Look, I didn't know the numbers off the top of my head. I looked it up real quick. I didn't know the question you were going to ask, but I knew it was up there.
Yeah.
Like I said, they are $20 million over the salary cap right now.
You get surprised J.J. Watt hasn't spoke up about this at all.
He has, but he hasn't been as demonstrative as Deshaun Watson, because J.J. Watt's a defensive tackle. Yes, he's one of the best defensive tackles, but defensive tackles don't demand that type of treatment like quarterbacks do.
And J.J. Watt's at the end of...
I think he's on his way out too.
Well, and it's going to be a lot easier. Somebody talked about that as well, right? Yeah. And said that, but you look
Green
at...
Bay is on line 1.
Exactly.
Right.
Hello.
Let's switch it to the NBA.
No,
you guys touched on it. James Harden out in Houston, now with the Brooklyn Nets. So pump the brakes or not, B-Train, we'll start with you. The Harden, KD, Kyrie trio will work in Brooklyn.
No, I'm with that. I think it will work, because I really believe that, one, you already know that these 3 guys like each other. They don't make these moves unless you've gotten the approval of a Kyrie Irving and a Kevin Durant. And mind you, these guys all play in L.A. together during the offseason. They've been doing this type of thing for years. And you talk about LeBron when he went to Miami. That was based off them playing in California for years. And when they genuinely like each other off the court, and then they go and they play in those pickup games and they're like, oh man, this looks pretty good, they always try to maneuver ways to see if they can line themselves up to be able to make a nice little run. And I think for KD and Kyrie, they saw one. They already had history. Yeah. KD and James Harden. They were teammates once before it got to a finals and got dusted by the Miami Heat, LeBron James trio. So they know that if you get 3 talented guys, 3 alphas, then your chances of winning go way up. And I think with Steve Nash at the helm, he couldn't. It's almost as if he's been living right, because to get that gig, knowing that you already had 2, you had KD and you had Kyrie already. Now you add a James Harden. How hard is it to roll out the balls and say, okay, you guys go make it work.
I'm right there with you. This is going to work. And to your point about, they did the check-in around. The way it works in the NBA, if you believe everything you hear, the players and the agents, they had these conversations before the teams did. Like, this was preordained and
years in advance.
Anyway, before this trade happened, right?
Well, no question.
It's like, hey, dudes, if I can make this work and come to Brooklyn, we all good with this?
Listen.
That's how it happened. And to your point, probably the last guy to find out was Steve Nash. He's probably sitting around waiting. He's like, what? Wait, this is happening? Because
I get Harden too?
And
Okay.
again, the difference between the NFL and the NBA, where the players can dictate these moves, and it works in the CBA because of the way the union set it up in the National Basketball Association versus the NFLPA. I mean, it really is. You look at it, and it had to work financially, but a lot more wiggle room in the NBA.
I hear you. They play off-season hoops together, and it feels right. It's different when the stats equal your money, and you know what I mean? It's different, and so you're going to ask three guys to really accept some kind of a role. And I Googled it before the show started. They still only use one basketball in Brooklyn, just like the rest of the league. So where does that ball go?
This isn't unique, though, Sean, because we've seen this play out because it was the same questions with LeBron and D-Wade. It was D-Wade's team, but D-Wade said, listen, you've got to be the alpha male here. You've got to be the one that take us where we want to go. So you talk about the egos, and at the time, when I started looking at the third wheel, Chris Bosh was an all-star in his own right. So you're talking about three giant egos meshing together to make it work. And I think now that you have James Harden in there, he's happy. To me, it is finals or bust. I'm not saying you have to win it, but I think you do have to get to the finals in order for this to be a complete success. But I think it will work.
Yeah.
I love that line. There's only one basketball. I did that back. You stole that from me back in the 80s when we talked about this.
When I knew you.
When you knew me. Because back when I was I followed the NBA a lot closer. The Atlanta Hawks did something. It was a lot different NBA then than it is now.
Yes, it was.
They assembled a really great bunch of individually talented players. Dominique, Cliff Livingston. I'm going to forget some of them, but
Tree Rollins.
They had Antoine Carr was and you can only play with one basketball.
And there was that team out in Boston and LA that had a little something to say about that.
And that's back when the Pistons were making their rise, and they were, again, we don't have to talk about that. But it was crowded, but they were more that, the defense individual players where they were talking about, look at all this great offensive talent that the Hawks have assembled.
Kevin Willis was
So to
guy.
your point, so the Hawks, go back and check it. Last time we checked, they didn't win anything because they couldn't check the individual egos.
It just takes guys wanting to accept some form of a role. And I'm not saying you're going to turn Kyrie Irving into I'm not saying you're going to turn Kyrie Irving into a role player, but they're going to have to accept some kind of a role.
And I think, too, with the Atlanta point, those guys weren't friends before.
Right.
These guys are all boys. They hang out. They're really good friends. KD and James Harden basically grew up together in the NBA. And Kyrie and KD have this sort of relationship that nobody can really explain, but they are really, really good friends. They bonded for a long time. And so you look at the big three in Miami, what they were all really good friends. They were all the same draft class.
Yeah.
They found a way to make this thing work because they were friends off the court. I think the same thing here with the Brooklyn Nets.
I'll feel a lot better if I see a picture of them all on the same banana boat taking an off-season ride together like we saw with the Miami 3.
There you go.
If I can just see the banana boat picture, I might think a little bit better.
I still feel some kind of way about the banana boat picture.
Well, and to that point, the three alphas, there's a roadmap now. It's worked.
Right.
And it doesn't have to last forever because you can break it up at some point and go get yours in the future.
That's right.
Yeah.
All right, final one. We'll do a little pop culture here.
This is where I'm always right.
So the release of Marvel's WandaVision this week on Disney Plus.
Yeah. Okay.
Pump the brakes or not, Disney is ruining the Marvel and Star Wars franchises by running it into the ground like it's top 40 radio.
Pump the brakes.
What?
Pump the brakes.
Do we need something every 4 months?
You know why? This is a universe. There's one single reason why I'm answering this question this way. Because a week ago or 2 weeks ago, I may have agreed with you. I may have gone down because this WandaVision looks about as dumb.
It looks awful.
You got Marvel and they're in a 60s sitcom or
it's weird.
Whatever.
I don't even know. It's weird. I don't want to watch it.
But they completely redeemed themselves because they're bringing back Deadpool. There will be a Deadpool 3. It has been confirmed.
Wow.
And it's being done under the Disney umbrella because apparently the thought was Disney's going to kill it because we don't do
And bring that on,
R-rated
yeah.
and all that. They are giving them full and complete autonomy on the script. There will be a Deadpool 3, so pump the brakes. I love it.
See,
I love everything about it because they're giving me the movie that I want.
You know what? Go ahead, Beecher. I'll let you answer first before I got.
I don't think they're pump the brakes. I don't think they're ruining it, but I think at some point you have to have something that we can be genuinely interested in. I'm not sure if these two characters are the ones that people really want to watch.
No.
Because I get their chemistry. It was a nice little sidebar during the Avengers, but I don't know if they could carry a show for an entire season.
I got no interest.
They're living in a house that's replicated from the Dick Van Dyke Show.
Yeah.
It's like they're living in the Dick Van. If you're gonna do it, have an original idea or thought. And that's a lot of things now are that way.
People go down the top 40 radio roll, and what I mean by that is they play your favorite song for you over and over and over and over until you're burnt out on it, and then you're moving on to the next thing.
And if you're trying to crack into the top 40, you do a song that's almost like yours so you can get into the rotation.
Yes.
Yeah, it's exactly right.
It feels like, you know what made Star Wars great when I was a kid is that there was 3 of them, and then the next time it was years and years and years later before they even spoke about doing anything else, and it made it magical. Now it's like I know I'm going to get some kind of half-assed, version of something every 6 months.
Well, and that's,
I feel like Disney's killing this
But
thing.
it's also the time we're living in, though. Everybody's watching TV a lot more now because everybody's afraid to go outside. So it's kind of the pastime now of activities for families. They're going to sit around and watch TV because nobody wants to be outside, and there's nothing really else to watch. I mean, you can only watch so much sports, and people are going to want a diversion from that. So,
well, and it's corporate America owning franchises that we love.
Yes.
We love the franchise.
Yes.
Star Wars franchise. We love the Marvel franchise.
Yes.
Disney, corporate America has to buy it and put the corporate stamp on it. It's like how much stuff can
ruining
we
every damn
turn out
thing.
and make money?
Yeah,
got to keep.
I'm over the whole Avengers thing. I hit the wall on it.
In case anybody's worried about us, you mentioned COVID, right? And you worry about us. We do a COVID check every time we come in here. And I said it. My nose is still. It works because you got the candle.
That's right.
You burn a candle.
That's right.
We make sure we can all smell, and then we go ahead and do the Train and Gross podcast. That's how we know that we're okay.
And I give you something to eat so you can taste too.
Absolutely.
So, we do what
most
we
of us
can
eat.
That's right. I forgot, Sean. My bad.
Yeah,
I got 40 days on the revitalized plan. We'll see.
Cha-ching.
Yeah.
Hey, I delivered that on a different platform for you. I know if you follow us on Trade and Grow, Sean does a wonderful job putting out the promos. I think I know what this week's going to be.
Awesome. That is awesome. Served him up on the platter.
Man,
I love
thank you very much. You serve it up, I knock it down. Well, that's going to do it for this week's edition of the podcast. Don't forget, follow us on Twitter @Train and Gross. It's great to be back in the train station studio. We'll see you next time.
I holla.